On Mondays, we talk Canucks. Here's what we discussed last week on the Shifts and Pucks podcast.
And the first way is, and I saw this on Twitter, and I'm not saying that Twitter is the be all end all, but I think that we are good at we're smart enough to address this on a couple of different angles. And we've debated the value of a JT Miller trade, but in terms of the JT Miller, the option of trading JT Miller and that cost of trading JT Miller, does this impact this in your mind in any way?
No,
I don't think so either.
Yeah, I agree.
I think his price is higher. He is a center. He is a center and can play the wing, and is producing at a much significantly better rate than Tyler Toffoli is this season, and has done it for the past couple seasons as well. So I don't think it really does.
And is only $500,000 more expensive than Toffoli.
I think that you would pay a little bit more, knowing what the acquisition cost is, and basically the Calgary Flames just set the market unless another team decides to blow it out of the water, essentially. So I think it brings more value to a Miller trade if that's going to happen, and might set the bar for a Garland trade if that's a possibility as well.
I'm not much of a believer in one trade involving other teams having a huge impact on other teams making deals, especially in a salary cap system. I mean, that's kind of really what sort of forces you into making certain deals. You got those constraints there, but also the level of motivation for the trade partners to make a deal as well, right? And we've been hearing these comments from Jim Rutherford about how they're not going to be in any rush to make trades, right? So that I suspect he's going to take a very patient, hold the line approach here in making any kind of deals. Whereas with the previous management, there was that pressure on them to progress and do something, and that's not there now. So, yeah, maybe there's a marginal impact there, but I don't think very much.
Sorry, Chris. I'm just going to quickly interrupt because Jean Yi in the chat here. You can't send JT to the Flames if you're Rutherford on the chance he resigns there. Nowhere. Resigns there, no way. We've already had this discussion. JT Miller is not a fit on the Flames. We have agreed and scientifically concluded that that's not an option. Like,
unless you trade Toffoli.
Yeah, right. It's not. That's not a fit. So I don't think that's what I'm not meaning that JT Miller comes to the Flames. I'm talking about the market for JT Miller. Just to clarify. Yeah. Sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
Yeah. All good. In addition to Rutherford making comments that we're not in a rush, like, I think we would have to literally be blown out of the water by the offer if we were to make a Miller trade in season. If anything, there's going to be roster moves in the off season, but not until then.
I also think that the Habs were feeling the need to make a move now after seeing Ben Sherratt go down to injury, and he is a major. He's supposed to be a major trade chip for them in this coming up to this deadline. So I think there was a little bit there, and plus I think that they're with Patrick Allvin and co. Let's remember he's the GM, not Jim Rutherford. And I know there's a lot of everyone just wants us because Trader Jim and all that. It's Patrick Allvin, and Rutherford goes out of his way to say it all the time. So Patrick Allvin and the management team that they've just put together, are still actually probably doing a little more assessment on the roster here, mm-hmm. And I think they have the ability to be a little more picky on the return. With the Habs, it's a full-on rebuild at this point, right? I think, and Rutherford has said it, and Allvin has said it, that they're looking a little. They're not looking at a full rebuild here. So I think a JT Miller trade is going to be. They're gonna target certain players on certain teams.
Well, that's if they're even open to trading him at all, and I mean Everything should be on the table, but JT Miller is one of those guys that. I'm sure there's a lot. There's debates internally, and there's a good debate within the fan base as to whether he's a core must keep piece or not. So we're not, and it's really hard to say where the organization is at with him.
And I think that's still being debated within that management group as well.
Yeah.
So I think they will have to be blown out of the water, and it's going to be it's going to be a make me basically say I can't say no to a trade offer at this point. I still think that he's not going to lose much value, if any value at all, if you trade him at the draft, in and around the draft. So it's not a. I don't think there's any real rush to do it, and I think it's just going to be. It's going to be something that will have to blow them out of the water. They'll have to get a certain prospect or young player back in return, as well as a first, and then whatever else to make it work. But if they say it's the Rangers and they're offering, what we're seeing is it's like what Philip Schittle, Niels Lundqvist in the first, and everyone's saying that, well, Chittle's okay, but he's not necessarily someone that they would be super excited about. If they're going after a right shot young defenseman that the Rangers have, they're going to want Braden Schneider. He fits the mold of what they kind of need more. So if they don't get that, they don't need to say yes to any trade offer here.
I also think
it also pivots on whether or not he wants to be there. I have a feeling that, and this is just a feeling, that with his passport being in the U.S. and the way that Canada has been for the past little bit, I know things are changing here, but maybe he wants to go home. Maybe he wants to go to the States, right? I think that is the biggest question. Does he want to be a Vancouver Canuck, not a Calgary Canuck? That's the AJHL. I think that's one of the biggest questions that you got to ask each other. The player, and I'm not saying that he doesn't want to be there, but where is his heart?
Yep, you do want to put that in there, but I don't think that I don't think that will change how they approach it going up to the deadline here, because I think they still got all the lead up to the draft, and there'll be more teams with more cap room available to work with at the draft than that would be available to them at the deadline right now, without making the deal very complicated.
I also think the Canucks can afford to be more pragmatic than the Habs on two levels. One, the Habs, I've used this term with the Flames before, but I do think that is a bit of a damaged brand in Montreal. You had the situation with Logan Mailloux last year, which was a tremendous PR disaster for the Canadians, as well. You've got the potentially, and I bring this up potentially because of what Devin has said. The draft is supposed to be in Montreal next year, but depending on, and Gary Bettman did say this at the All-Star break, if things don't change, they may have to consider moving it. So if you're Montreal, you need to acquire draft picks, and you need to make sure that you're in the middle of things pretty quick, and that you're in a midst of announcing your fans base that you're in a rebuild. The Canucks, you can debate where they are at or not, but I don't think they need to be in a hurry to make any trades to put themselves in any. I think they have put themselves in a position to give them time to make the proper decision. And I think one of the things that I think with Patrick Allvin that this seems to be the first thing that I've noticed is he's not really sharing the spotlight, and people are forgetting he's the general manager. But I think he has an opportunity here to be pragmatic. And I think for the Canucks overall, I think the previous regime was in panic mode, was in Peter Chiarelli mode. I think right now you can just let's stay calm. You don't have to trade Miller now. You don't have to make any trades now. You can actually go through that deadline, and I don't think you can. I think there's a reasonable argument to say, we can just leave it as is and hope, and we'll see where we're at, and we'll wait for the offseason.
Yeah, and we don't want to have a situation where they get pressured into making a deal just for the sake of making a deal to keep the fans happy somehow, right? Like that's the pressure point of doing an in-season move with a deadline to meet that causes me some concern that they end up making a deal that they regret. Whereas in the off season, and a lot more cap flexibility amongst the teams to make deals, they could probably get a better sale on a guy like a JT Miller than they might during the season. So, if I would hope that the Canucks do take the approach of selling at the deadline and make good deals, but not be rushed into making one just for the sake of optics.
Tonight we have a special announcement from Sean Warren in Area 51, so join us 4:30 Pacific, 5:30 Mountain. Twitter, Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com, Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com, Shifts and Pucks, Twitch.com, Shifts and Pucks, or wherever you get your podcasts.